Hi folks, HR Funk here with number 34 in my series on law enforcement qualification course challenge videos. Now if you've not seen any of the videos in this series up to this point, what I'm attempting to do is to fire a law enforcement firearms qualification course from each of the 50 states for the purpose of comparing and contrasting those courses and ultimately trying to determine what I think is the best law enforcement firearms qualification course in the country. This series does focus on duty handguns, and maybe in the future I'll do another series featuring rifles and shotguns. But for now, today's duty handgun course comes to us from the state of New Hampshire. Now, as I understand it, New Hampshire has several different approved courses for law enforcement officers who are qualifying in that state. This is one of them. This particular course requires the officer to fire 35 rounds, and in order to achieve a passing score, the officer has to fire 75% of those shots, or 27 rounds, inside of this silhouette. Now, you'll notice there are two areas demarcated in the silhouette, but again, as I understand the rules, shots striking anywhere inside the overall silhouette count as a hit and count toward qualification. As I said at the end, the officer has to have 27 of the 35 rounds fired inside of the silhouette in order to qualify. This course is required to be fired 2 consecutive times by officers undergoing qualification, and each time they have to achieve that score of 75%. I'm only going to shoot through this one time since this is just for demonstration and evaluation purposes. I don't think you're going to get any more from seeing me shoot it 2 times. But if I really was qualifying in New Hampshire, I would have to shoot this 2 consecutive times and get that qualifying score of 75%. The New Hampshire course, or this New Hampshire course, is divided into 6 separate stages that take place at distances as close as 3 yards from the target and as far away as 25 yards from the target. As always, I will explain what is required in the course description before I shoot that stage so you know what you're about to see. And it's time to introduce today's challenger. I thought it was time for a little bit of end frame action. So today's challenger is my 4-inch Smith & Wesson Model 629 mountain gun, chambered for the .44 Magnum cartridge. And before any of you ask, yes, I am going to be shooting this course with full power Magnum ammunition. I have full power 240 grain lead semi-wad cutters that are being driven by a healthy dose of 2400 powder. So somewhere up there, Elmer Keith is smiling. These bullets are going to leave the muzzle of the mountain gun at about 1200 feet per second. So this is not a powder puff load. This is going to be a little bit of a wild ride on this New Hampshire course, folks. So buckle in and let's see how it goes. And I'm set up and ready to go. As I mentioned a moment ago, this course starts out at a distance of 3 yards from the target. From here, on this first stage, the shooter begins with the firearm secured in the holster. On the signal to fire, the shooter has to draw and fire 2 rounds into the body of the target in a time limit of 3 seconds. The shooter then reholsters, and this drill is repeated 1 time, so when I'm finished, I will have fired a total of 4 rounds on this first stage. For stage 2 of this New Hampshire course, I'm back to a distance of 5 yards from the target. From that distance, the shooter once again begins with the firearm secured in the holster, and on his signal to fire, the shooter has to draw and fire 3 rounds right hand only, then transition the revolver to the left hand and fire 3 rounds left-handed only, all within a time limit of 7 seconds. For stage 3, the officer moves back to a distance of 7 yards from the target. From that distance, on the signal to fire, the officer has to draw and fire 6 rounds into the body of the target in a time limit of 8 seconds. And we're on to stage 4. In stage 4, the shooter moves back to a distance of 10 yards from the target. From here, on the signal to fire, the shooter again has to draw and fire 6 rounds into the body of the target, this time in a time limit of 10 seconds. Stage 5 of this New Hampshire course is fired at a distance of 15 yards from the target, and it's fired from behind cover. I'm using my modified target stand back here to simulate cover, and this stage is fired in a very specific sequence. On the signal to fire, the shooter has to draw and fire standing from the right side of cover 2 rounds into the body of the target, then kneel down and fire 2 rounds kneeling from the right side of the target into the right side of cover rather, into the body of the target. The shooter then has to reload. There's a mandatory reload after the first 4 shots. The shooter then stands on the left side of cover and fires 2 rounds standing from the left side of cover, and then kneels down and fires the final 2 rounds from the left side of cover in a kneeling position. Now there's nothing in here to indicate the shooter has to use the left hand when shooting from the left side of cover, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to shoot the whole thing using my strong hand, and this sequence has to be completed in a time limit of 25 seconds. And I logged my first miss on that stage. I pulled 1 shot just below the target, and I think I felt this one. There was one of the ones that I shot from the left-hand side of the barricade that just did not feel good, and I pulled that one a little bit low. Everything else is still looking good though, so on we go. 6th and final stage of this New Hampshire course, folks. And this stage requires the shooter to do the same exact drill 3 consecutive times. So in this drill, the shooter starts 5 yards from cover. On signal, the shooter moves to cover, takes a kneeling position behind cover, and fires 2 rounds into the body of the target in a time limit of 12 seconds, and this is conducted at a distance of 25 yards from the target. And that's the New Hampshire course, folks. All in all, not a bad course. Kind of a good basic course, but there are some challenges to it. You've got both strong hand only and weak hand only shooting from 25 yards, some reloading stages in there. The time limits are just tight enough to make it a little bit of a challenge. So really not a bad course. Now we don't see some of the more advanced things like malfunction clearing and failure drills and that kind of thing like we've seen in some of the other courses, so I don't think this is going to score as high as some of the other courses that you've already seen in this series. Even so, I kind of like this course. Like I said, it's a little bit of a challenge. It has a good mix of shooting skills that are tested, and just not really all that bad. And here's one last look. Still got my last 6 casings in there. One last look at today's challenger. My 629 mountain gun, firing the full power 44 Magnum ammunition, did very well. In fact, it was good for 97%. I had 34 out of my 35 shots in the proper scoring area of the target. That single shot from 15 yards that I fired from the left-hand side of the barricade was the only one that made it off the target. So I have to work on shooting from the left-hand side of barricades with this particular revolver. In any regard, that's the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, if you order anything from Optics Planet, be sure to use my discount code, which is... And if you use that discount code, it's good for 5% off anything you purchase from Optics Planet. See you next time, folks. And until then, good shooting. Bye-bye.